what Jesus really said. In Aramaic, 3 mistranslations in the Lord's Prayer for 2,000 years. Millions of people have repeated this prayer without knowing what it actually says. The words you learned were never the words Jesus spoke. Tradition holds that Jesus spoke several languages, yet Aramaic was the language of his heart, the language his own mother spoke fluently in their home. Somewhere between Aramaic, Greek, and Latin, 3 sentences were quietly reshaped, and with them, the way you understand God, fear, and your own power. Today we go back to the original language Jesus prayed in, and we uncover 3 mistakes hiding inside the most repeated prayer in human history. What you discover in the next few minutes may change the way you speak to God for the rest of your life. The first mistake, what Father truly meant in Abu. Most people believe the opening word of the Lord's Prayer simply means Father, the way a child might address an earthly parent. But in Aramaic, the word Jesus actually used was Abun, and it carries a depth that no single English word can hold. Abun does not only mean Father in the sense of authority or distance. It carries the image of a creative source, a womb of origin, the one from whom all breath and all life continuously flow. This is described in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, where Jesus first teaches his followers how to pray. When the early translators moved this word from Aramaic into Greek, and later into Latin, they had to choose a single term to represent something far larger than a title. They chose Father, and in doing so, they preserved authority but lost intimacy. They preserved hierarchy but lost the sense of being continuously birthed by a living source in every moment, not just once at creation. This matters deeply for how you understand your own power. If God is only a distant father, you may relate to him the way a subject relates to a king, waiting for permission, afraid of judgment, always at a distance. But if God is Abun, the ever-flowing source from which your very breath emerges right now, your relationship changes completely. You are not approaching a throne from far away. You are returning to the source that is already sustaining you in this exact second. This is why so many people pray this prayer their whole lives and still feel spiritually distant. They are saying the right words, but picturing the wrong relationship. When Jesus taught his followers to begin with Abun, he was not teaching them to address a ruler. He was teaching them to recognize their own origin and to speak to it as intimately as breath speaks to the body it moves through. Once you understand this first mistake, the entire prayer begins to shift. You are no longer asking a distant king for permission to exist. You are remembering, word by word, that you were never separated from the source in the first place. And this recognition alone is often the beginning of real inner transformation. Before we continue, I want you to know that shortly in this video, we will pray together, using the original words Jesus himself once spoke. Keep watching, because that moment is coming. The second mistake, what temptation really meant to Jesus. The second widely repeated phrase is usually translated as "lead us not into temptation." For centuries, this line has confused sincere believers, because it seems to suggest that God himself might lead a person into sin. But this reading comes from a translation problem, not from what Jesus originally meant. In Aramaic, the phrase is closer to a request for protection during trial, not a plea to avoid moral seduction. The underlying word relates to being tested, tried, or shaken by circumstance, the way metal is tested by fire. Jesus was not describing a God who tempts his children into wrongdoing. He was describing the honest human experience of facing hardship and asking for strength to remain steady inside it. This distinction matters enormously if you struggle with anxiety or fear about your own weakness. Many people carry a quiet, unspoken belief that God might be testing them cruelly, or worse, setting traps for their failure. This creates a subtle, corrosive fear underneath their entire spiritual life. But the original Aramaic removes that fear entirely. It reframes the line as a request for steadiness during the trials that life naturally brings, not a fear of divine intrusion. When you understand this correctly, this part of the prayer becomes an act of personal power rather than a plea from weakness. You are not begging a suspicious God to spare you from his own traps. You are asking the source that sustains you, Abun himself, to keep you rooted and unshaken when pressure comes. The way a tree stays rooted when the wind is strong. If this teaching already feels this deep, imagine having a full guide with deeper explanations of Jesus' true teachings in Aramaic. You'll find the link to the study guide in the comments. And the best is yet to come. In the next chapters, you'll discover what could change everything for you. Before we go further, let's pause together for a moment and speak the words Jesus himself once spoke. Out loud if you can, right where you are. Abun, source of my breath and my being, I come to you not from a distance, but from within the very life you give me in this moment. Quiet the noise inside me now, and let your peace settle where anxiety has lived for too long. Teach me to rest in you the way a child rests without needing to understand everything. Let this stillness stay with me long after this prayer ends. Amen. You'll also find the complete Lord's Prayer in its original Aramaic, word for word, along with its full translation, pinned in the description box below, so you can read along or save it for your own prayer time. Now, let's speak together the complete prayer Jesus taught his disciples, first in the language he actually spoke, and then in English, so you can feel both the sound and the meaning behind each line. The Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, Abunda Boshmaya. Our Father who art in heaven, Nithkadesh, Shmak hallowed be thy name. Tati Malkathok, thy kingdom come. Nevit Sevianoch, Ekana Dibwashmaya, Afbarcha, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Havlan Lakma, Disunkanan, Yaumana give us this day our daily bread. Washbuklan, Kaubain, Ikana, Dafkanan, spoken, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Welatolen lanesiona, and lead us not into temptation. Elapatsen minbisha, but deliver us from evil. Tilaki malkatha wahila watishbukta. Lalomalmin, for thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Amen. The third mistake. What daily bread truly meant in Lakma. Now that you have spoken the full prayer, let's look closely at one line most people rush past without a second thought. Give us this day our daily bread. It sounds simple, almost domestic, as if Jesus were only teaching his followers to ask God for groceries. But the Aramaic word lakma carries a meaning far larger than bread on a table. Lakma relates to nourishment itself, the sustenance that keeps something alive, whether that something is the body, the mind, or the spirit. In the culture Jesus spoke to, bread was not simply food. It was survival, connection, and provision woven into a single word. This is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6. directly after the line about God's will being done, showing that provision was never separated from purpose in his teaching. When this phrase was translated into Greek, it introduced a rare word, one barely used anywhere else in ancient writing, often rendered as daily, but carrying a deeper sense of the bread that sustains existence itself, not just today's meal. This suggests Jesus was not only teaching people to ask for their next loaf, he was teaching them to ask for whatever truly sustains their life in that moment, whether that need was physical, emotional, or spiritual. Think about what actually sustains you day to day. For some, it is money, and the fear of not having enough quietly shapes every decision they make. For others, it is connection, purpose, or simply the strength to face one more difficult day. Jesus was not narrowing this prayer down to flour and water. He was widening it, so that whatever nourishment you are lacking right now can be spoken honestly in this same line. This reframes the entire relationship between you and provision. Instead of a distant God deciding whether or not you deserve your next meal, you are asking Abun, the living source, to keep supplying whatever sustains you, moment by moment. The way breath keeps being supplied to your lungs without you having to manufacture it yourself, provision becomes participation in a living flow, not a transaction you must earn through worthiness. This is often where people carrying financial anxiety misunderstand their own prayers the most. They ask for provision while secretly believing scarcity is more real than the source that sustains them. But when you understand Lakma correctly, asking for your daily bread becomes an act of trust, not desperation. You are not begging into emptiness. You are acknowledging a source that has never once stopped sustaining you, even during the days you did not notice it. Ask yourself honestly what your version of daily bread is right now. It may not be food at all. It may be peace, patience, courage, or simply enough strength to get through today without breaking. Jesus left room in this single word for every one of those needs to be spoken directly to Abu, without shame, and without needing to translate your real need into something smaller or more acceptable. The word hidden behind evil, what Bisha really points to. The final line most people repeat without questioning is "deliver us from evil." And for centuries, this phrase has painted a picture of a cosmic enemy lurking outside of us, waiting to strike. But the Aramaic word Jesus used, Bisha, points somewhere far closer to home than an external demon in the shadows. Bisha is closely related to the idea of something unripe, unformed, or immature, rather than a fixed, external force of pure evil. In the language Jesus spoke, the same root could describe fruit that had not yet ripened, or a mind that had not yet matured into wisdom. This is a strikingly different image than the horned figure many were taught to fear growing up in church pews and Sunday school rooms. This does not mean darkness or harmful forces do not exist in the world. It means the primary battlefield Jesus was pointing his followers toward was internal, not external. The most dangerous unripeness is often the immaturity still living inside our own reactions, our own fears, our own unexamined patterns, not a distant devil orchestrating our downfall from the outside. This single shift changes how you might approach your own struggles, especially in relationships. So much conflict between people is not caused by malicious evil, but by unripe, immature reactions colliding with each other. Fear meeting fear, wound meeting wound. When you pray to be delivered from Bisha, you may actually be asking to be delivered from your own unhealed, reactive places. The parts of you still unripe, still learning, still capable of causing harm without meaning to. Consider the relationships in your own life that repeatedly cause you pain. How much of that pain comes from a truly evil intention, and how much comes from unripeness, from people, including yourself, reacting from wounds that were never given the chance to heal or mature. Jesus may have been teaching something closer to self-awareness and inner maturity than a plea against an outside monster. This reframing is not meant to dismiss real darkness in the world. It is meant to redirect your spiritual energy toward the place where you actually hold power, your own inner development, rather than toward fear of forces entirely outside your control. When you ask a boon to deliver you from Bisha, you are asking to be let out of your own unripe reactions and into the fuller maturity Jesus consistently pointed his followers toward throughout his teaching. This is often the hardest of the three mistakes to sit with, because it asks you to look inward rather than outward for the source of your struggles. But this discomfort is exactly where real transformation tends to begin. Not in blaming an external enemy, but in gently ripening the parts of yourself still capable of causing harm. Thank you for getting this far. If the awakening of consciousness is hitting you hard, it's a sign that you're ready to go deeper. The study guides are waiting for you in the pinned comments. The Transformation Protocol, Living Abwoon, Beyond the Prayer. Understanding these three mistakes is powerful, but understanding alone does not transform a life. Jesus did not only teach people to think differently about words, he taught them to live differently, day by day, breath by breath. So before we close, I want to leave you with something practical, a simple daily practice you can carry with you long after this video ends. Each morning before you check your phone or let the noise of the day take over your mind, take 30 seconds of stillness and speak the word Abwoon slowly, 3 times, out loud if you can. Not as a magic formula, but as a way of remembering, before anything else happens, that you are already connected to the source that sustains you. This is not a ritual of asking. It is a ritual of remembering something that was already true before you woke up. Throughout the day, whenever you feel yourself tightening with anxiety, fear, or the old belief that you are facing life alone, pause for a single breath and silently repeat Abwoon 1 time. Let it interrupt the spiral before it builds. This single word, repeated in these small moments, begins to retrain the nervous system to return to steadiness instead of spinning into fear. The same way a tree's roots pull it back to center after being pushed by wind. At night, before sleep, speak Abwoon 1 final time, and this time pair it with a simple mental release. Picture whatever unripe reaction, whatever bisha you carried that day, whether it was impatience, resentment, or fear, being handed back to the source so you do not carry yesterday's unripeness into tomorrow's growth. This is not about pretending the day was perfect. It is about consciously releasing what no longer needs to be carried forward. This practice takes less than 2 minutes total across an entire day. Yet done consistently, it begins to reshape how you relate to God, to provision, to conflict, and to yourself. You are no longer only reciting a prayer you learned as a child. You are living inside the relationship Jesus actually taught. One small return to Abwoon at a time. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation. If you have stayed with me through all 3 of these mistakes, something in you was likely stirred, not just intellectually, but somewhere deeper. That stirring is not accidental. It is often the first sign that old, inherited misunderstandings are beginning to loosen their grip on how you relate to God, to yourself, and to the people around you. Jesus never intended for this prayer to become a mechanical repetition, said quickly out of habit, and forgotten just as fast. He intended it to be a living doorway back into the source that never stopped sustaining you, even in the years you prayed these words without understanding them. Today, you have reclaimed a little more of that original meaning, word by word, layer by layer. I am glad you are here, and I mean that deeply. The fact that you are seeking this knowledge tells me everything about where you are in your journey. Study guides with deeper teachings are waiting for you in the pinned comment below, with gratitude for walking this path together. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, WRITE, the word restoration, in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal. Thank you for sharing this moment of ancient wisdom with us. Until the next revelation, walk in peace, walk in freedom, and walk in the power of Ephatha. Be open.